In the hidden folds of the Appalachian Mountains, in a town called Odd, West Virginia, lives a family that seems to be outside of time. They became a global phenomenon, their faces seen by tens of millions of people. At the center of this viral storm sits one woman, still and silent. Her name is Lorraine Whitaker. She has never spoken a word to a camera, yet her image captivated the globe. We are about to uncover the tragic family history that may explain her silence and question the uncomfortable ethics of turning a human life into viral entertainment. But before we do this, we would ask you to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon so that you can follow through our research that multiple channels miss out on while covering these stories. Her face has been seen by tens of millions, yet her voice has been heard by no one. This is Lorraine Whitaker, a woman who lives in a world of profound silence. But that silence tells a story of a family folded in on itself, of a tragic history buried deep in the Appalachian Hills, and of the uncomfortable truth about what happens when a human life becomes content. What you think you see is not the whole story. The real story is in the silence. Lorraine spends her days in a small, crowded house, often seated in the same chair, a quiet observer of the chaos and love that surrounds her. She lives with her siblings, Ray and Betty, and her son, Timmy. While Lorraine is nonverbal, her family understands her. A glance, a hum, a shift in her posture, these are the elements of her language. It's a language that outsiders can't easily interpret. Where strangers see a blank expression, the family sees a response. Where the internet sees emptiness, her family sees a sister and mother who is present, aware, and part of their fragile ecosystem. Her brother Ray communicates in barks and grunts, sounds that startle newcomers but are understood by his family. Her son Timmy, who is also her nephew by bloodline, hums a constant rhythm, providing a strange, steady soundtrack to their lives. This was their normal, a tapestry of nonverbal cues and deep, unspoken understanding. But in 2020, their private world was breached. A filmmaker named Mark Lyda, from the YouTube channel Soft White Underbelly, brought their lives to the screen. The world was introduced to Lorraine not as a sister or an individual, but as a central figure in what was sensationally dubbed America's most inbred family. Suddenly, her silence wasn't just a fact of her life, it became the haunting centerpiece of a viral narrative. Lorraine's silence isn't a mystery to be solved, but a history to be understood. The story, as it's been pieced together from online genealogical records, begins generations before she was born with a set of identical twin brothers, Henry and John Whitaker. Living in the geographic and social isolation of rural West Virginia, their family tree began to fold in on itself. The children of the twin brothers, who were first cousins with a closer genetic bond than most, married each other. This pattern repeated. John Isom Whitaker, a product of that first cousin marriage, went on to marry his own first cousin, Ada Rigg. They had 9 children. One of those children was Gracie, Lorraine's mother. Gracie then married her double cousin, John Emery Whitaker, in 1935. Because their fathers were identical twins and their mothers were related, their children inherited a severely restricted gene pool. Gracie and John had 15 children together. Some were born with physical and mental impairments, believed to be the devastating consequence of generations of a shrinking gene pool. Lorraine, born in 1946, was one of them. Her inability to speak, along with the conditions affecting her siblings, are the living echoes of this complicated family tree. This isn't a story of choice, but of circumstance, geography, and a history that trapped a bloodline in a repeating loop. It's easy to point to the Whitaker family tree as the sole explanation for their condition, but that would be dangerously simplistic. The true antagonist in this story is larger and more insidious, a century of systemic neglect, economic abandonment, and cultural stigma directed at Appalachia. For generations, this region has been stereotyped as a land of backward, insular hillbillies. This caricature serves a convenient purpose: it can turn victims of systemic failure into authors of their own misfortune. The poverty in places like Odd, West Virginia, is no accident. It's the result of extractive industries that took the coal and left behind collapsing economies, limited educational opportunities, and little to no healthcare infrastructure. For families like the Whitakers, isolation wasn't just a preference, it was a geographic and economic reality. The winding roads and forgotten hollows that kept them hidden from the world also kept the world from them. In this context, inter-family marriage can be a symptom of profound isolation. When opportunities to meet people outside your immediate community are non-existent, the pool of potential partners shrinks to relatives and neighbors. The Whitakers story is not just a genetic tragedy, it is an American tragedy, one that reveals how society can abandon a whole region and then mock the consequences. People in nearby towns grew up hearing about the Whitakers like an urban legend, driving by their house to harass them, making the family fearful and protective. Their neighbors became fierce protectors, sometimes greeting outsiders with shotguns to shield the family from cruelty. Despite the harshness of their environment and the judgment of the outside world, the Whitaker home isn't devoid of humanity. It is held together by Betty, the family matriarch. Born in 1952, Betty promised her mother she would never marry so she could dedicate her life to caring for her siblings. She is the family's spokesperson, their cook, and their fierce protector. In the videos, it is Betty who interfaces with the outside world, who manages the groceries bought with donated funds, and who ensures Lorraine, Ray, and Timmy are cared for. Moments of connection shine through the grim reality. Ray, despite his barks, is often seen smiling. Timmy, the only one in the immediate household to graduate from high school, seems filled with an almost constant joy. And Lorraine, in her silence, responds to the touch of her family, leaning into their presence for comfort. They may not communicate in ways the outside world understands, but they operate as a unit, a system of mutual reliance and affection forged in the crucible of shared hardship. The filmmaker, Mark Lyda, documented these moments, and for many viewers, it was this glimmer of humanity that was most compelling. Donations poured in through GoFundMe campaigns, totaling over $100,000, which helped the family with living expenses, home repairs, a new truck, and medical bills. These acts of generosity showed a desire to connect, to help, to see past the spectacle and recognize the people at the heart of the story. This is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable. The viral fame that brought the Whitakers financial aid also turned them into a form of digital entertainment. The line between documentary and exploitation is a thin one, and with the Whitakers, it has been blurred to the point of invisibility. Critics have labeled the work poverty porn, arguing that it monetizes the suffering of vulnerable people for clicks and views. The situation grew even more complex. Lyda's relationship with the family frayed after he discovered he had been lied to about a family member's death for money, leading him to declare he was done with them for a time. Other YouTubers inserted themselves into the narrative, creating drama that further sensationalized the family's plight. The chaos has only escalated. In late 2024, a fire destroyed one of their mobile homes, forcing them into even more cramped living conditions. And in September 2025, the West Virginia State Police launched an investigation into a fraudulent scheme where individuals were allegedly accepting donations on the family's behalf, pulling the Whitakers into a legal vortex they are utterly unequipped to handle. Lorraine Whitaker, the silent woman at the center of it all, had no say in becoming a public figure. Her life, her image, and her family's tragic history were packaged into content and consumed by millions. Did the exposure help them? Yes, it brought money for a new roof and a truck. But at what cost? Their privacy is gone. Their story is no longer their own. They have become a case study, a spectacle, a cautionary tale about the ethics of the creator economy. When we watch these videos, are we bearing witness, or are we simply consuming someone else's pain? The digital world often reduces complex human beings to simple, shareable narratives. But the story of Lorraine Whitaker is not simple. It forces us to confront our own role in this exchange. If you believe in seeing the humanity behind the screen, comment "I see through silence" to show you're no longer blind. Lorraine Whitaker will likely never know the scale of her own fame. She will continue to live her life in Odd, West Virginia, surrounded by the familiar language of her family's presence. Her silence remains unbroken, but what it reflects back at us has become deafening. Her story is a mirror. It shows us our own fascination with the strange and the broken. It reveals a media landscape that can reward exploitation with virality. And it exposes the deep, systemic issues of poverty and neglect that America would rather ignore. Lorraine will never narrate her own life. She doesn't need to. Her silent, enduring presence says more than words ever could. It is a testament to survival against all odds. And it is a haunting question posed to all of us who have watched: What did we see, and what did we choose to look away from? The real story was never just about the family who barked and grunted. It was about the world that watched.